I want to talk about photosynthesis just for a few minutes. And this is what happens in plants. And the beautiful thing about it, class, is that plants work 24/7, 365, no complaints, no rest breaks, no nothing. We love plants. We get oxygen from plants. We get glucose from plants. We get proteins and fats from plants. A lot of the foods that we know and love, we get all this stuff from plants. And if it's not a plant food, if it's an animal-based food, then they got it from plants. So that kind of leads us to the idea that the main event is the input of sunlight. That's where the energy eventually comes from to supply the energy to a chloroplast to make energy for animals. And so inside of the chloroplast are these stacks of thylakoid discs. And each stack is called a granum. And I'm going to draw a couple of stacks. There are far more than that, but I'm just going to draw a couple because that's all I need to demonstrate the lesson here. When sunlight shines onto a chloroplast, it causes electrons to be excited to a higher energy level. And then what happens is when these electrons move back down to a lower energy level, then they lose energy. They lose energy, but they use this energy to fuel, in this case, the movement of hydrogen ions across membranes in the thylakoid discs. And that's what I'm going to talk about. Remember, it's not just sunlight that plants need, but it is also, what else, class? Right. Plants have to have water. And so what happens here is that water is broken down to form oxygen, which we breathe. We love that. But get this. Now, this is intuitive. Listen to me. H2O. Say it out loud. H2O.
H2O.
Right here we have O2. What's missing? H, right? So when we break this water molecule into oxygen, if we have two of these oxygens, how many hydrogens are we going to get? 2 times 2 makes what? We're going to get 4. So there we go. There are 4 hydrogens here available, and these electrons help pump hydrogens across a cell membrane, and then it comes back through an ATPase pump and ATP is formed. So that's the big thing that happens right here, is the formation of ATP. And that's going to be used later in the Calvin cycle, which is sometimes called a light-independent reaction. So this is going to intersect over here in just a little bit, but we're not ready quite yet for that. These same electrons that go to a high energy level and then drop back to a lower energy level, as they continue dropping, they will also catalyze. Let's put some more electrons here and let them drop back down again. These will catalyze the formation of NADPH. This is a niacin type molecule, a B vitamin that is also used by plants for energy processes. These are going to be the 2 energy molecules, ATP and NADPH, that are using the Calvin cycle to make fragments, G3P fragments. These electrons that get started moving right here, they kind of keep dropping, and then they get excited, then they keep dropping, and so we get an abundance of energy storage, you might say. Now, I want to kind of make an example of something that will fit into your world and my world too. Have you ever been in a room where somebody had the glow-in-the-dark stars and asteroids on the ceiling? Well, when you first turn the lights out at night, they glow pretty bright, don't they? What about 2 or 3 in the morning? Are they glowing?
No.
Not so much. Why? Because the electrons in that plastic got excited, and as they dropped down to a lower energy level and dissipated that energy for you as photons of light, they slowed down and eventually stopped. They have to be recharged again. And so that's kind of how this By the way, this is called PS2 and PS1, photosystem 2 and photosystem 1. That's how these work. And they do it by moving electrons and using these electrons to pump hydrogen ions. Remember, the ATP is what harvests the energy out of these hydrogen ions. I may have said that wrong, excuse me. The movement of the electrons pumps hydrogen ions across a membrane, and then the hydrogen ions, as they come back, catalyze the formation of ATP. Now, let's talk about the Calvin cycle for just a minute. And by the way, we are talking about photosynthesis. Plants need CO2. And with CO2, carbon dioxide, by the way, that's a waste product of our bodies, just like water is. So the outputs from our cellular respiration are the inputs for photosynthesis. With the use of ATP and NADPH, this cycle turns and turns. And for every turn of the cycle, a couple of G3Ps are formed. Glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. Everybody say glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. Glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. It is a 3-carbon molecule, but Calvin cycle forms 2 of them. 2 times 3 is 6, and 5 of those molecules are used to regenerate one of the intermediates. So there's only 1 available carbon for every turn of the cycle. So it takes 6 turns to get this recognizable molecule. What do you call this?
Glucose.
Glucose or sugar. Now, in plants, we don't just make sugar. We can also make something called this. What is
Wood.
What is cellulose? It's also called wood. Okay? We can also get this. We can also get this. My favorite fat is avocado. I love to chop some onion, chop some tomato, a little sour cream, maybe some jalapenos, big bowl of chips, and I'm rolling with the guacamole. That's what I'm trying to say. That's what happens for me. Probably the most recognizable plant protein for you and I is soy. Tofu, tempeh. There's a lot of soy products. Probably most of the hamburgers that we ate while we were in school were soy burgers, but they were quite yummy. Delish. Does anybody remember this, or am I the only person that remembers eating these in DeSoto County schools?
Every Friday.
Yep, every Friday. Actually, probably my favorite meal are the chicken nuggets and the mashed potatoes. You can dip the nuggets in there and eat these. That was Thursday. Was that Thursday with rolls? Got to make my mouth water. I got to tell this one memory before I'm done. One of my favorite memories, I taught at Horn Lake High School back in 2001 to 2005, and it was the one high school where the kitchen ladies made sweet tea for the teachers. And so it was like, does it get any better than chicken nuggets and mashed potatoes and a roll and sweet tea? That is a southern DeSoto County school marvelous meal. Yeah, there's some love in this room for that. Good memories. And that's, by the way, a lot of that's plant-based, right? Mashed potatoes, rolls, tea. The chickens, they were busy eating something to make chicken meat, right? They were eating some kind of plant matter. So really, ultimately, what does it all go back to, though? Let's talk about that. It goes back to the sun. One thing I learned this morning by listening to Bozeman Science. We were doing this in class today, and I learned this, and I thought this was pretty clever. But he said it's called photosynthesis. The first part of the reaction, the light-dependent reactions, are reliant on photon energy from the sun, and then the Calvin cycle represents the synthesis portion of this cycle. So that is a brief throwdown of photosynthesis, and it may not be exactly perfect, but it's about as perfect as I can do today, and it is October the 7th of 2015. Thank you, Giovanni.